Yep, we're giving Dan Patrick another shot. Now he's bringing on the legendary Peter King to talk about the Carolina Panthers right here with me, Nick, on Roll Coverage. Let's jump into it.
Hey, I thought it was all over.
This is legendary reporter, sportswriter, and phenom, Mr. Peter King. I actually was more of a Eisen fan, but seeing Peter King come on there constantly has made me adore this man. So much knowledge when it comes to the league. If he's not in the Sports Writers Hall of Fame, I believe he will be. Dude is just a staple. A staple if you love the sport of football. Again, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dan Patrick, bringing in Mr. Peter King to talk about our Carolina Panthers.
More dysfunctional organization, the Jets or the Panthers right now?
Oh, definitely the Panthers.
I agree 100%. It's not even close.
I mean, the Jets have had a bunch of weird little step-in crap moments recently, but, you know, I can tell you that the players are still listening to Robert Saleh. I'm not positive, but what I hear is that Woody Johnson still very much believes in Saleh. He's going to be back. Joe Douglas, I'm not positive about, but my gut
feeling before he jumps into it, again, sorry to interrupt you, again, legendary sports writer, Mr. Peter King. I think that Rodgers makes it a little easier, gives them another year. Zach Wilson had a little bit of a showing in this past game where they're able to get a win. I think they dropped like 30 points, and I think that they're literally just a quarterback away. I think they're a quarterback and a wide receiver away, personally. The Dalvin Cook thing was a rushed decision, I would say. He really wanted to come in there and play with Rodgers, and then, of course, Rodgers doesn't really play. Dalvin Cook has no real impact. He could have been a lot of other places where he could have made a lot more impact. But I do think that they are going to do everything they can to get Devontae Adams over there as well. So imagine Adams, Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall. That offensive line, they obviously need to fix a little bit of that line. They got another bust on that line as well. So, yeah, I don't think it's close. Carolina is by far the worst of those organizations. And not only that, the owner makes it the worst situation in football. So,
feeling, it's just a gut feeling, is that those guys will come back together for another year. Now, in Carolina, it's as big a mess as there is in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. They're going to run it back with the Jets. They're not running back shit with my Carolina Panthers. They probably won't run back the GM, any of the coaching staff. We're probably going to get rid of a lot of wide receivers. We're going to trade Thielen. There's going to be a bunch of moves in the offseason.
The story that The Athletic wrote yesterday about, the dysfunction and sort of the Hunger Games mentality where coaches and staffers are texting the owner of the team.
Yeah, that's some grimy shit. I'm sorry. I try to not curse on here. But yeah, that's some grimy shit to go behind the head coach's back with the GM to get his ass fired. Like, I'm sorry. If it ever comes out who specifically that person is, which again, my tinfoil hat theory has been that it's Chris Tabor. I understand that it says offensive-minded coach or an offensive coach in the article by Joe Person and Diana Russini about the Hunger Games situation with the Panthers. But I still think that was just made as red herring to throw people off the trail. I think it's Tabor. He was the holdover previously with the owner. It would make sense that he's like a mole per se. So that's just my opinion.
Telling him what's wrong with the team. It's, David Tepper has turned into, he's the new Dan Snyder.
I agree. You know what? There's somebody that posted this a while ago. I'm not going to be able to give that person credit, but then I said the same thing. He is real close to being Dan Snyder. And Dan Snyder was one of the worst NFL owners, but I still think there's another level above Dan Snyder, and that's an NBA reference. That is Donald Sterling. I think David Tepper is very quickly moving into the Donald Sterling level of garbage person that should not own a team. I think that there should be a morality clause. I think that there should be a clause in contracts for owners that they can't be, overly involved. You're the owner of a team. You're not running the team. You're not the GM. You're not whatever. But obviously that leads into some issues. I I also think that there should be a limit on the amount of money that you're allowed to pay out to old coaches. So it would actually force teams to keep coaches. So at NFL, if you ever hear this, institute a rule that says that they can only have, say, $40 million being paid out total to old coaches, and then you'll find that coaches aren't dropped as easily. So I think that would be a quick way to solve that.
Minus all the, sexual improprieties and allegations. But David Tepper, I wrote this week, Dan, is Steinbrenner without the winning. He's a disaster. And if you're going to hire a head coach and 10 months later you're going to fire him, you shouldn't have hired him in the first place.
I agree, but I think that was because, again, they were going with it. They're bringing the nostalgia back. Hey, man, we're bringing back our first quarterback, a guy who threw our first touchdown, all that stuff. Obviously there was a quarterback drafted ahead of Reich, and Reich wasn't even drafted by Carolina for that matter. But overall, I think it was more of a homecoming for Reich. I thought it would have been a great opportunity. I think that David Tepper massively flubbed it by not letting Reich finish, and that's going to be a massive mark on this organization for a while. I think the Chris Tabor thing and seeing his demeanor change, just in case you guys don't know, we do breakdowns of the press conferences for the Panthers as well as other teams in the South. We will be expanding that at some point, but I just think that, when you see him starting out being happy, go lucky and everything like that, and then you see him coming off of that Saints loss just defeated, you can see Tabor's clearly upset. I think Peter King is crushing it with this take. Overall, the organization is just garbage. Simple. And they're my team, so that's saying a lot.
You didn't really believe in them. And to take all the suggestions and all the emails, all the texts.
Well, it's not even that. I don't think that it's not that you didn't believe in him. You didn't set him up for success. You didn't let him pick his quarterback. You didn't let him pick his coach. You didn't do any of that. If you were to come into that situation and be like, we're drafting Bryce Young, number 1 overall. They've already made the trade happen in this theoretical scenario. We have the number 1 pick. We're going with Bryce Young. We want to bring in Frank Reich. Hey, Frank, the quarterback that you're going to have is Bryce Young. He probably would have said no, to be honest with you. He likes big, tall, strong quarterbacks. Stroud was his pick. Richardson was probably his alternate, if not vice versa. Bryce Young was 3rd when it came to quarterbacks that I think Frank would have taken. So I think from the beginning, he was set up for failure. And again, that's the owner's fault.
From people inside the organization, I'm assuming at least some of them, if not most of them, were Reich's doing a crappy job. This is what we ought to be doing. It's just, it's so ridiculous. Can you imagine, a good franchise with people undercutting the head coach, going behind his back, many of them to the owner? It's insane.
Any of them is something I haven't heard. So the report that they put out, Joe Person and Diana Russini, obviously not in this interview, put out that the GM and an offensive coach, which again I disseminated to be Tabor, as a red herring to throw it off. If it's multiple people going behind the head coach's back, then that tells you everything you need to know about this owner. He wants people to be a yes man. He wants people to come behind their backs, backstab, and do everything like that. That is not the way you win at the highest organization. You should know that, being the former partial owner of the Steelers. But again, you spent too much time in the box and too much time listening to people that don't know football. That's why we're here, David Tepper. We're here because of your failure as an owner.
It's insane. And David Tepper, if that story is true, and look, Joe Person, Diana Russini, very reputable reporters. I have no reason to think it isn't absolutely true, and that really would bother me if I were a fan of the Panthers right now.
Yeah, or if you're a head coach coming in. Again, shout out Peter King. Shout out everybody over at the Dan Patrick Show. They do such a great job every time. If you don't follow these two gentlemen, you need to. If you like sports, you make sure you follow them. Before me, before any of these socials down here, you follow Peter King, you follow the Dan Patrick Show, and of course you need to follow the GOAT, Rich Eisen. But regardless, these breakdowns are going to keep continuing. I'm going to keep agreeing with this man, Peter King. The organization as a whole is destroyed. People are not going to want to come there. Players are going to think twice about coming here. There's so many problems with this organization, and it all stems from that bald motherfucker, David Tepper. This lays at your feet, and until you can wise up and actually make a really good decision, which I doubt you can at this point, the organization is screwed. It's a money grab for you, and that's all it ever was. Regardless, my name is Nick. This is Roll Coverage, and on a somber goodbye, have a great rest of the day.